Shalom. I got a DM from a young man, and he was having a problem with Ezekiel chapter 28. And he's not the only person. He's not the only person that has a problem with that chapter. There are a couple more chapters like it. There are many instances in the Bible that's like that, and there are a couple other chapters in the Bible that are two of the other main incidents along with Ezekiel chapter 28. Let me repeat what I just said. A lot of people are confused about Ezekiel chapter 28. And there are other chapters in the Bible along with Ezekiel 28. Them together with Ezekiel 28 are the three major instances, though there are other instances that are like that. And I want you to see what's going on, because a lot of people will make argument. A lot of people will make argument that Christ is not in the Old Testament. A lot of Arabs make that argument, and a lot of Old Testament only people make the argument that Christ is not in the Old Testament. But another argument is that Satan is not in the Old Testament either, and that's far from true. But I want you all to understand something. The same way that Christ is concealed in the Old Testament, let me repeat that. The same way that Christ is concealed in the Old Testament is that exact same way Satan is concealed in the Old Testament. And I want to explain something to a lot of people. What a lot of people don't understand is that the Old Testament, once again, I say this thousands of times over, the Old Testament is a confirmation of the New Testament. It proves that the New Testament is true. So anybody that doesn't believe in the New Testament is a very foolish person. And the New Testament is a revealing. It reveals what's taking place and what's really going on in the Old Testament. See, there's no doubt about that the Old Testament is the Bible. Everybody bases things on the Old Testament. But there are a lot of disbelievers in the New Testament, and that's so foolish. So Satan and Christ are concealed in the Old Testament. I'm going to explain to you why a lot of the Old Testament, especially Ezekiel chapter 28, is so complicated to gather. Okay? Now, first, we're going to go, the first segment is operations of Satan. So this is how this message is going to go. The first segment is the operations of Satan. I want to explain to you, especially to the young man, I want to explain to you, young fella, how Satan operates. Okay? I want to explain to you how he operates. Then I'm going to give you two examples just like Ezekiel 28. The second segment is titled Examples. So the first segment is titled Operations of the Devil or Operations of Satan. The second segment is titled Examples. I'm going to give you two examples. And the third and final segment is Ezekiel chapter 28. So we're going to get into Ezekiel chapter 28 last. Okay? Let me make sure I didn't make a very big mistake about something. Okay, I didn't. All right. So the first segment, the operations of Satan. Let's go to Genesis chapter 3. Let's go to Genesis chapter 3. Now, the serpent was more subtle. Genesis chapter 3. We're going to read from the top of the chapter until I'm finished. Genesis chapter 3. Now, the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. Now, the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. Okay, the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which Yahuwah Elohim had made. And he said unto the woman, Yeah, hath Elohim said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said, And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for Elohim doeth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And when the women saw that the tree was good for food, blah, 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 blah. So the first operation of Satan, I want you to understand pretty much how he operates. He's cunning and he's persuasive, and he gives offers to people. Excuse me. He gives offers to people. Okay? So why does Satan have to give offers? Okay? Why can't he just do it himself? All right? So I just wanted to read that so you can see how cunning he is and how he operates. He operates like a snake. He lies. He comes to you and then he presents you a so-called opportunity, and he lies. He tells you a lie. He deceives you to make you do his bidding. He deceives you to make you do his bidding. Now, I want everybody to understand something very critical. We know that Satan doesn't come to any and everybody. The devil, he only approaches important people. I need you all to understand that. The devil doesn't operate where, demons do, little devils. Remember where I told you that the devils came from. They proceeded from the giants, and the giants proceeded from the fallen angels. So we have low-level demons that are on this planet. In the Quran, they're called jinns or traps. These jinns, traps, demons, they're real. They're all around us. And what they do is they try to persuade the minds of the whole world. But tonight, we're just talking about the devil himself. He is not somebody that approaches any and everybody. He only approaches specific people. And we're going to find out what type of people he approaches so we can get a very good understanding of his operations. So we see here in the garden, you do know that Eve was a very important person. Y'all know that, right? Eve was a Eve is a VIP. Okay? There's no doubt about that. Now, she's not as big of a VIP as Adam was, but Eve was a VIP. Okay? We don't want to get that, we never want to get that twisted. All right? Now, let's move on to Jude. We want to move on to Jude. Before we go to the other two, I want to go to Jude because there's something that I want to bring out first. So let's go to Jude. Okay. And I want to go to verse 6. I want to go to Jude and I want to go to verse 6. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Why is that so important? Because I need you all to understand something. This verse here is talking about the fallen angels, the Nephilim. It's referring to the Nephilim and the way that they were able to take the women of earth, mortal women, the way that these fallen angels were able to mix themselves with blood is they had to leave their original estate as angels of heaven, as the Gregory, as the watchers of heaven. So you have to understand that originally in size, they are much greater in size than mortal people. But these Gregory, they have capabilities that we cannot fathom and we don't understand. The same thing with Satan. He's able to do things that we can't do. You understand that? I think everybody needs to understand this. If you're somebody out there and you think that the devil doesn't have powers, leave. This is not for you. I don't have time for foolishness. Okay? We all know who the devil is. Some of us don't believe in him. The very intelligent and the wise of us, we know that he exists. Okay? So if you're a Idion Meridian that does not believe in the devil, this message is not for you. Okay? We want to make this very simple. So Jude chapter 6, when it says, and the angels which kept not their first estate, this is specifically talking about the Gregory, or the 200 fallen angels from the beginning that took place during the time of Genesis, during the time of Enoch, during the time of his grandson Noah. Okay? So I need you all to understand that. So what these angels did was they looked upon the beautiful women, the beautiful black women of the earth, and they lusted after these women. These were angels, and they weren't created to do that because they were eternal. But they left their natural estate. They didn't keep their original estate because of the lust that they had for these women. And they shrank, they became smaller, and they left heaven. They had to leave heaven in order to do that. That's the reason why the 200 angels met on Mount Hermon and made a pact with each other. It says, if we do this, you know there's no turning back. And none of them snitched on one another. Not that Christ don't know what they did, but they all stood tall on what they all came down to the mountain and made a pact to do. Okay? So why did I say this? Because these 200 Gregory weren't the first angels that did that. Satan did it with Eve. Okay? So they weren't the first angels to leave their first or original estate, habitat. Okay? When it says they kept not their first estate is talking about them being giant Gregory that resided in heaven. When it says but left their own habitat, that means they actually left heaven. And then they joined together on Mount Hermon that is spoke about in the book of Enoch to make the pact and then go and do the wickedness that they done. So here's the reason why I told you all that. If you all want to know why the fallen angels are not seen today and why they're not doing today what they did in the past, is because Christ put a sovereignty after this, Christ put a sovereignty between fallen angels and mankind. Now, this sovereignty does not mean that the fallen angels cannot work behind scenes, work behind scenes, work behind the scenes, work behind the scenes, work behind the scenes, controlling the governments and controlling all the governments of the world. And when you see in movies, when you see government officials and they go and they talk to quote unquote aliens, all that's saying is the movies can't be outright and say that these are fallen angels. But that's basically what happens. There are specific people in the government that talk directly to these fallen angels. And these fallen angels call the shots and they give instructions. And if you look, I'm just telling you what's real. Now, you don't have to believe it, okay? That's why I said this message. I really wish, if you're not in sync with this by now, stop coming here and hating me for no reason, simply because you can't process what I'm saying to you. Just stop coming here. If it's been years now, you've been coming and you've been watching these messages, and you can't process these messages, just stop coming, man. If you can't process them by now, that means you're not a child of God. And people get mad when I say that, but that's what the Bible says. To be spiritually minded is eternal life. And to be carnally minded is death. You understand that? So there's no need to come here and say I'm corny and say all of these things. Just don't come. If you don't want to learn anything, just don't come. No big deal. So we need to understand that the Gregory messed it up. Even Satan was given the decree that he just can't walk out in the open and do what he wants to do. Satan does not have the authority to just walk out in the open and do what he wants to do in his original estate. You understand that? Because guess what? If he could, a lot of people would be dead. You understand that? If Satan could touch people, you understand where I'm going with this? So there's a reason why he can't come out and do this. Okay? So all praises to the Most High and hallelujah to Christ for putting this sovereignty between us and the fallen. Okay? Now, we need to understand that the fallen, they are wicked. Okay? They're not our friends. Now, you saw how Satan operated in the garden. And now you know why Satan has to work from behind the scenes, along with, because there are other fallen angels. I don't know how many. Nobody knows. A lot of them were arrested. A lot of them are in the prison beneath Antarctica. And a lot of people don't believe that. When I said that, they don't understand that. But the fallen angels, the Gregory, the 200 Gregory that were led by Azazel are all beneath the Antarctic mountain. Okay? Now, I'll prove that to you all one day. Okay? I got literature, and I'll prove that to you all one day. But as of right now, matter of fact, I'll make that a soon-to-come message. If somebody want to try to beat me to the punch, I don't care. Go ahead. Do your thing. Now, let's go to Matthew chapter 4. Let's go to Matthew chapter 4. Let's go to Matthew. Now listen, because I'm giving y'all some good stuff. This is the first segment, the operations of Satan. Let's go to Matthew chapter 4. Matthew chapter 4. Let's go to verses 5 through 10. Matthew chapter 4, and let's go to verses 5. Matter of fact, let's start off at the top. Matthew chapter 4. Then was Christ led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward and hungered. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Then the devil taketh him up into the holy city, and setteth him on a pinnacle of the temple, and saith unto him, the devil saith to Christ. Now, remind you, the devil, he didn't really know who he was talking to, but let's keep it moving. And saith unto him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. Yahusha said unto him, It is written, again, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and sheweth him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them, and saith unto him, All these I will give you, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. So I need you to understand what's going on. First of all, let me explain to you all. Before Cain killed Abel, the devil came to Cain. Cain did not just automatically kill his brother. The devil had came to Cain, and somewhere in that conversation, the devil explained who he was to Cain and persuaded him to kill Abel. Now, you can hold on to that information for another time. Here in this passage right here, even though the devil didn't know who he was really talking to, and I'll prove that, but not tonight. He came up to Christ, and he took Christ to a high mountain. And he said, Christ, listen. There's the whole world here, brother. I tell you what, it's yours. Bow down to me. Kneel. Call me your Elohim, and I'll give this whole world to you. Now, do you think Christ was the first person that he made that offer to? No. Christ wasn't the first person that Satan made that offer to. Satan has made this offer that people can't refuse on many occasions throughout the course of history. Satan has walked up to specific men, man to man, and have given other men during the course of history the same offer. You don't believe me? Y'all don't believe me? All right. Let's go to Revelations chapter 16. Let's go to Revelations chapter 16. This message is really not a long message. Let's go to Revelations chapter 16, but I want to get it moving. Let's go to Revelations chapter 16, and let's go to verse 13. Revelations chapter 16, and let's start at verse 13. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. Let me say that again. And I saw 3 unclean spirits, like frogs, come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. The dragon is the one world order system, is the beast system. The beast is the Antichrist, and the false prophet is the first. They're all called beasts, but when John the Revelator in this vision says that he saw 3 unclean spirits come out of their mouths. That means proceeding from them was evil. Proceeding from the Antichrist, proceeding from the false prophet, and proceeding from the one world order, the Antichrist and the beast system that will be put in place for world dominance. Now, I want to keep reading. For this is Revelations, this is chapter 16, and I just read 13. Now here's verse 14. These 3 spirits, for they of the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and the whole world, to gather them to battle of the great day of God Almighty. Now, I want to read this again because I want everybody to understand what's going on. I'm going to read it straight through. I'm not going to waste time. I'm going to keep it moving. This is Revelations chapter 16, and I'm reading verses 13, 14, and 16. I'm reading verses 13, 14, and 16. I'm skipping 15 because it skips a beat of what I'm trying to say. Let me say that again. This is Revelations chapter 16, and I'm reading verses 13, 14, and 16 because 15 skips the beat of what I'm trying to say. So now let's go. Verse 13, and I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the Antichrist, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are these 3 spirits, for they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of the great day of God Almighty. And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon, or Jehoshaphat, the valley of Jehoshaphat, in which the battle of Armageddon will take place. Now, as I tell everybody over and over again, World War III and Armageddon are 2 separate battles. The Antichrist is going to stop World War III, and he's going to be looked at like a hero. The Antichrist is going to step in and call for world peace. And everybody is going to look at the Antichrist and they're going to wonder at him. And they're going to say, he's the man. So World War III is finished. It's done. World War III, the new world order, will come into full effect after World War III. The War of Armageddon is taking place after the 7-year tribulation. World War III and the Battle of Armageddon are 2 separate wars. They're not the same war. World War III is among the kings of the earth, man and nation against men and nations. It's a carnal war. Armageddon is the war when Christ returns and slaughters. That's Christ is not coming during World War III. You understand that? So stop listening to the false prophets. Christ is not returning during World War III. Christ is returning during Armageddon, because that's his war. All right? So now, I want you to listen to something very carefully that I said from verse 14. In verse 14, it says that these devils are working miracles, and they go forth unto the kings of the earth. So these, what comes out of the mouth of the false prophet and what comes out of the mouth of the Antichrist, and the instructions from the one world order, the other kings of the earth are going to take these instructions and they're going to carry out these orders. So what you need to understand is that these spirits are going out to the other kings of the earth, to the other people whom are in charge and whom sit down at the table with the Antichrist. You see how Satan works? Satan only deals with a specific bloodline, which is his own bloodline, because there's a demon seed among us. And moreover, he deals with those whom are the Amalekites or the Untouchables. And he deals with other wicked people in power. Satan has no reason to come to the mayor of New York City. Satan has no reason to go to Biden or to go to Trump or to go to the Pope, because they're all foot soldiers. Satan would go to Adolfo, the Black Pope of the Vatican. Satan would go to the eldest Rothschild. He would go to the Queen and to the Duke. He would have a conversation with the Elon Musk. Not saying that Musk ever met Satan directly. But what I'm saying is, specific people Satan will talk to. Y'all don't believe me? All right. Let's go to Job, chapter 9, verse 24, and then we're going to start the second segment. Let's go to Job, chapter 9, verse 24. Let's go to Job. Let's go to Job, chapter 9, verse 24. Let's go to Job, chapter 9, verse 24. I read this scripture very often. Many of you know that. Job, chapter 9, verse 24. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? He covereth the face of the judges. Who is the judges? Us, the Negroes, the Israelites. We are the judges. And Satan gaslights us for our true identity, which is the reason why the world does not listen to us. And the reason why we are in the position that we are as a people, because Satan has put imposters in our place. Understand that? So I'm going to read this verse again, and then we're going to go to the second segment. Job chapter 9, verse 24. This earth is given unto the authority of the devil. He covereth the faces of the Israelites. He conceals the true identity of the black people. If not, where and who is he? Let's move on to the second segment, the two examples. Let's move on to the second segment, the two examples. We're only going to read 2 chapters, and we're going to the third segment for Ezekiel chapter 28, and everybody have a good night. Let's go to the second segment, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with Ezekiel chapter 31. We're going to start with Ezekiel chapter 31. And I really want to go there because a lot of people make mistakes of this chapter. We're going to go to Ezekiel chapter 31. How many of you all out there are in a camp? Raise your hand. Well, I'm not in a camp, but show of hands. You're a fool. You're a very foolish person if you're involved in a camp. Now, I fight myself about this all the time. Let me tell you why. Because a part of me feels as though I'm doing something wicked. Because do camps have a positive side? Sure they do. Sure they do. Within a camp or within an organization like the Nation of Islam, it helps build character, it builds camaraderie, it builds strengthening amongst men. And sometimes I have to weigh the options. I have to weigh the good and the bad. But organizations like those, they tell a lot of lies. So, my thing is, it's hard sometimes to do what I do. And like I said, some of the smaller camps have better character. But there's a lot of misinterpretation. There's a lot of blatant lying that goes on in 501c3 organizations. And it's hard to it's hard to overlook all of the good things about these organizations, how they can bring folk together and teach folk the commandments, even though they really don't do it the proper way. They do it the improper way. Okay? But there's a lot of good done in these organizations. But there's a lot of lies told and a lot of misinterpretation. And we're going to start with Ezekiel chapter 31. And we're going to see a great misinterpretation of this chapter, Ezekiel 31. Let's read. Now, I'm going to read this chapter straight through. And I want a lot of people to understand that you're not going to understand what I'm reading. I don't want you to get discouraged if you're somebody who's not Bible inclined. I'm going to read Ezekiel chapter 31. It's a very complicated chapter. I understand this. And it grabs a lot of people by the balls, which is the reason why sometimes you have to be patient and you have to read very carefully and very slowly. And sometimes you also have to ask Christ that he give you wisdom so you can understand what the hell is going on in some of these Bible chapters. But I'm going to read Ezekiel chapter 31, and I want everybody to pay very close attention. Yes, you are going to get lost. And when you get lost, don't worry about it because I'm going to straighten it out for you. Let's begin. Ezekiel chapter 31. Give me a minute. Okay. Ezekiel chapter 31. And it came to pass in the 11th year, in the 3rd month, in the 1st day of the month, that the word of Yahuwah came unto me, saying, the word of Yahuwah is Christ. The word of Elohim is Christ. Son of man, he came to Ezekiel, and Christ came to Ezekiel, and he said to Ezekiel, Son of man, Christ is calling Ezekiel, son of man. Christ says to Ezekiel, verse 2, he says, Son of man, speak unto Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and to his multitude, whom art thou like in thy greatness? Behold, the Assyrian was a cedar in Lebanon, with fair branches, and with a shadowing shroud, and of an high stature, and his top was among the thick boughs. The waters made him great, the deep set him up on high, with her rivers running about his plants, and sent out her little rivers unto all the trees of the field. Therefore his height was exalted above all the trees of the field, and his boughs were multiplied, and his branches became long, because of the multitude of waters when he shot forth. All of the fowls of heaven made their nests in his boughs, and under his branches did all the beasts of the field bring forth their young, and under his shadow dwelt all great nations. Thus was he fair in his greatness, in the length of his branches, for his root was by great waters. The cedars in the garden of God could not hide him. The fire trees were not like his boughs, and the chestnut trees were not like his branches. Not any tree in the garden of God, in the garden of God, in the garden of God, not any tree in the garden of God was like unto him in his beauty. I want to stop there for a minute because there are a lot of camp leaders that refer to this chapter as talking about Adam. This chapter has nothing to do with Adam. Okay? Yeah, sure, Adam was in the garden. This doesn't have anything to do with Adam. Let's keep reading. I have made him fair by the multitude of his branches, so that all the trees in Eden, trees in Eden, trees in Eden, that were in the garden of God, envied him. Therefore, thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, because thou hast lifted up thyself in height, and he that hath shot up his top among the thick boughs, and his heart is lifted up in height. I have therefore delivered him into the hand of the mighty one of the heathen. He shall surely deal with him. I have driven him out for his wickedness. Let's stop at verse 11 for a minute. So it went from the Garden of Eden they're speaking about somebody in the Garden of Eden. Now, surely that has to be talking about either one of two people. Whenever Christ is mentioning somebody in the Garden of Eden, it's either talking about, three people. It's either talking about Adam, Eve, or the devil. So then a very confusing twist takes place in verse 11. Oh, the Garden of Eden. Oh, simple. That's talking about Adam or the devil. They're the only two people that were in the Garden of Eden. True. But then verse 11 is going to say, I have therefore delivered this person into the hand of the mighty one of the heathen. He shall surely deal with him. I have driven him out for his wickedness. So the heathen cannot deal with Satan. They don't have enough power. Satan is in control of much of the heathen, just like Satan is in control of a lot of you Negroes. So how can then this either Adam or the devil, which it's not talking about Adam. So the process of elimination is he's talking about the devil in verses 9 and 10. But then he goes in 11 and says, well, I've given him to another nation. So the heathen means that the devil was given over to the power of a nation of people. Now, this is where you have to use your sense. Can a mortal man control the devil? Of course not. Of course not. So let's keep reading. Okay? And strangers, the terrible of the nations, have cut him off and have left him. Upon the mountains and in the valleys, his branches are fallen, and his boughs are broken by all the rivers of the land, and all the people of the earth are gone down from his shadow, and have left him. Upon his ruin shall all the fowls of the heaven remain, and all the beasts of the field shall be upon his branches, to the ends that none of all the trees by the waters exalt themselves for their height, neither shoot up their top among the thick boughs. We're almost done. This chapter is not long. Okay? It says, to neither parts of the, is what does it say? To the ends, verse 14, to the ends that none of all the trees of the waters exalt themselves for their height, neither shoot up their top among thick boughs, neither their trees stand up in their height, all that drink water, for they are all delivered unto death, to the nether parts of the earth, in the midst of the children of men, with them that go down to the pit. So it's talking about somebody who is in the Garden of Eden. But if it's talking about the devil, then right here is saying that the devil is brought down into the midst of the children of men, with them that go down to the pit, meaning them that die. Now, the devil will be eventually thrown in the lake of fire, but that's not the pit that they're talking about here. They're talking about the pit of torture, Sheol, where humanity or mankind went after he died. Satan is not subject to that part of Sheol because Satan has an everlasting, eternal soul. Well, we all do, but Satan is not subject to that part of that realm. Now, we're almost done this chapter. Give me a minute. It says, "Thus saith the Lord God, in the day when he went down to the grave, I caused a mourning. I covered the deep for him, and I restrained the floods thereof, and the great waters were stayed. And I caused Lebanon to mourn for him, and all the trees of the field fainted for him." 3 more verses. "And I made the nations to shake, and I made the nations to shake, and I made the nations to shake at the sound of his fall. When I cast him down to hell with them that descend into the pit, and all the trees of Eden, all the trees of Eden, all the trees of Eden, the choice and the best of Lebanon, all that drink water, shall be comforted in the nether parts of the earth. They also went down into hell with him, unto them that be slain with the sword. And they that were his arm, that dwelt under his shadow in the midst of the heathen, to whom art thou thus like in glory and in greatness among the trees of Eden, among the trees of Eden, among the trees of Eden? Yet shalt thou be brought down with the trees of Eden unto the nether parts of the earth. Thou shalt lie in the midst of the uncircumcised, with them that be slain by the sword. This is Pharaoh and all his multitude, saith the Lord." This is Pharaoh and all of his multitude, saith the Lord. This is the Pharaoh and all of his multitude, saith the Lord. Now, is anybody still confused? Or do you understand? Is anybody still confused or do you understand? So at the end there, it told us who the entire chapter was talking about. The entire chapter is talking about the Pharaoh of Egypt that had us in slavery and in bondage during the time of Moses. Now, we all know that the Pharaoh was never in Eden. No. The Pharaoh was never in Eden. But the devil was in Eden. So we'll do a process of elimination. Sure, we know Adam and Eve was in Eden. But with Adam, is Adam alive at this time of the Pharaoh? No. When Pharaoh existed, or when Pharaoh was brought up into power, Adam had already been dead. So somebody in the Garden of Eden was working with the Pharaoh. It had to be the devil. See, this chapter is talking about the devil and the Pharaoh because they were working together. Now, let's go back into the top of the verse. Let's go back to the top of the verse. And it's going to tell you, verse 2, when Christ says to Ezekiel, Christ says, "Son of man," speaking to Pharaoh. king of Egypt. So understand that Ezekiel, at this time, the original Pharaoh of Egypt, is also dead. So this is taking place, okay, in a latter day Egypt. And he wants Ezekiel to speak to the modern day Pharaoh during the time of Ezekiel and tell him that the same thing is going to happen to him that happened to the Pharaoh of the past. Because you got your kingship. You got your kingship. Just like Caesar, Nero, Alexander the Great, all of them, Nebuchadnezzar, they all got their kingship the same way, through the devil. That's why Christ is talking. He's talking, he's saying, listen, and the trees are a reference for either men or fallen angels. I can be referenced as a tree. Satan or any fallen angel can be referenced as a tree. This is metaphor, metabolically speaking, metaphorically speaking. Okay? So you have to understand. That's why he goes into talking about his branches. And when it says the garden of God, that's why a lot of people in this very next chapter that I'm about to read, this is why a lot of people say that this chapter is talking about the devil. But it's not talking about the devil directly and specifically. It's actually speaking about a man, a mortal man that has done workings with the devil to gain his power. A lot of our people in the entertainment industry have got their glamour, their glitz, and their gold through working with. Now, they didn't speak to the devil. They just spoke to somebody, a gatekeeper, who not even the gatekeeper's gatekeeper has spoken to the devil. There are people higher up in the industries, in the industry, that you don't even know about, that talk to the Clive Davises and talk to the Quincy Jones. They ain't nothing. Clive Davises, Quincy Jones, they ain't nobody. They're nobody, let alone the people that they fucked in the ass to be your gatekeeper. None of them are anything. But guess what? You all are damned alike unless you denounce Satan and announce Christ. You have to cut the meat with Satan, and you have to join covenant with Yahushua HaMashiach, because y'all are afraid of the wrong person. Christ is a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous man. And you're going to find out the hard way, because you all think it's a game. All of you. You think it's a game. Let's keep going. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 14, because a lot of people have the same problem with Isaiah chapter 14. This is the second segment, and it's called Examples. This is the second example. And then we're going to go to the chapter that the young man, which I think is more straightforward than Ezekiel 31, which I just read. And I actually think it's more straightforward than this chapter. I think Ezekiel chapter 28 is the easiest of the three. We're going to go to Isaiah chapter 14. We're going to listen to all the problems that people have with Isaiah 14. But we're not going to start off at the top because Isaiah 14 is very long. Let's start off at I'm going to get something to drink. And we're going to start off at verse 4. And we're not going to read all the chapter. I don't want to be here long tonight. Let me get something to drink. I'm going to read the important verses here in Isaiah chapter 14. Then we're going to go to Ezekiel 28, and y'all have a good night. Let me get something else to drink because I gotta keep my be right back. All right. I'm gonna get an early night's sleep tonight. Do what I gotta do for my aunt and get me an early night's sleep tonight. This is Isaiah chapter 14. Isaiah chapter 14. We're going to start off at verse 4. Thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. Now, this is Christ, once again, the same way he came to Ezekiel. In this arena, he's talking to Isaiah. And he's telling Isaiah, you shall take up a proverb. What is a proverb? See, a lot of people that kept saying that this was the devil missed a very critical word. The word proverb means a riddle. Wherever you see a proverb, it means a riddle, or metaphorically speaking. A proverb is a riddle. Metaphorically speaking, Christ says to Isaiah that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon. Now, this is not Nebuchadnezzar. This very well might have been a king that went by the name of Sargon or Sargon. He was spoke about in one of the Lord of the Rings movies. But Sargon was a real king. And in some very hard to find literature, which I'll bring to you probably one day, it is very evident in this hard to find literature that King Sargon, just the way he was exposed in one of the Lord of the Ring movies, King Sargon definitely dealt with the devil. King Sargon was known to have spiritual powers, and a lot of people was afraid of this king. This king was also a warrior. He was a warrior king, and he was a very wicked king. This could be the king. Don't take my words for final lap. Do your own research if you care enough. Research for yourself. But Isaiah chapter 14 could possibly very much be talking about an evil, powerful king that went by the name of Sargon. Okay? I may have mispronunciated his name just a little bit. But this is the riddle or the metaphor spoken against this king. It says, Yahuwah hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. It says, the Lord hath broken. See, tell me if you can hear the identical wording that was taking place in Ezekiel chapter 31. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted, and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yeah, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars, trees of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee. At the coming, it stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. If you don't understand, don't worry about it. This is not a message that I want you all to start getting headaches about. I just want you to pay attention to specific things. Okay? It says, verse 11. No, verse 10. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak? Art thou also become weak as we are? Art thou become like unto us? Thy pomp, thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vials, the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? See, the whole world fell, and the whole world rejoiced when King Sargon fell, because he ruled the world. It says, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? You are the one that weakened the nations. For thou hast said in your heart that you will ascend. It says, well, thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mountain of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. This is another reason how you know that it's not Satan that said this. It was a man that said this. Why? Because Satan knows that he cannot be like the Most High. He knows it. You all have been misconstrued with the westernized Caucasian way of thinking. Satan does not think he's equal to Christ. He doesn't think that. He knows his place. Satan knows that his realm is earth, and that this earth is Christ's footstool. Satan knows that this earth is the footstool for Yahuwah Almighty, creators of heaven and earth. What makes y'all think Satan is that stupid? But what Satan did was persuade a man to believe that he was capable of doing this. See, Satan clouds the judgment of people. When you see narcissism all throughout the internet, it's a great delusion. That is because Satan has clouded their judgment and they can't think properly. For every narcissist out there, your judgment is clouded and a great delusion has fell upon you. Just like many of you out there who are non-believers, and you think that everybody else are the foolish ones. You are the fool, because only a fool says in his heart there is no God. Don't you understand that? Fools don't believe in Christ. You think you know everything. Fools say within their heart, there is no God. Fools. See, that's what happened to these kings. Just like every proud individual in the world, what goes up must come down. It ain't no gravity. It is the pride. What pride comes before the fall? Don't you understand that? Everybody is subject. Everybody. Every human being and every angel is subject to this universal law of the creation of Christ. Everything, even the dogs, the cats, the bears, the lions, the leopards, the she-goats, they're all subject. If you got a prideful animal, but animals don't get prideful. Animals don't break that law. Animals don't break that law. Animals don't break that law. Don't you understand that? Animals don't break that law. Only we do. See, this king said that I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High. Yet you, this king, shall be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man? Is this the man? Is this the man? It's not Satan. It's not Satan. Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake the kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness? See, he conquered the world. He made the world desolate as a wilderness. This is what the Antichrist will do in these last days. This is what Nebuchadnezzar did, and this is what the Pharaoh did during his reign in Egypt. He controlled the world because his branches were many. His army, his armed forces. The Pharaoh had branches. Don't you understand that? King Sargon got branches. When the Antichrist rises in this last time, in these last days, he's going to have branches. You understand that? And his branches is going to be terminators. The Antichrist is going to be something different, more different than all the kings have ever been. The Antichrist is going to have T-2000s and T3 Terminator 3000s running around here. Far more dangerous than the branches of the kings of the past. That's why it tells us these last days is going to be more graffiti, meaning blood. It's going to be the worst than any of the other times of apocalypses, because this won't be the last. This won't be the first apocalypse. It'll be the last apocalypse. But there have been apocalypse after apocalypse during the course of history. This is talking about an apocalypse now. This is the apocalypse of King Sargon, who fell because his heart was lifted up, because he had power and gold, and he had the devil with him. Don't you understand? The devil has failed time after time after time after time after time. And many of you out there, you deal with the devil. Many of you rich folks in the industry, and you think you will never fall. Your time is coming. You understand that? It's coming. Everybody who deals with the devil, your time is coming. Okay? It's just that simple. Right? He says that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the houses of the prisoners. All the kings, listen, all the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, every one in his own house. But thou art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch, and as the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with the sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet. So I don't want to keep reading this, but basically this is the same thing going on as the previous chapter that I just read to you about Pharaoh. Now let's go to the third and final segment, which is Ezekiel 38, and everybody have a good night. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 28. And we're going to see where the young man was struggling at. Where now, hopefully now that you all are really, you should understand by now. I made Ezekiel chapter 28 very, very easy for you all now. When I start reading Ezekiel 28, because of everything that I just gave you previously, it's going to snap to you real easily now, young man. You're probably reading Ezekiel 28 already and say, I get it now. I get it, old head. I get it. This message is titled, How to Read the Bible on this day of February 7, 2024. Ezekiel chapter 28. This is Ezekiel chapter 28. Let's get out of here. The word of Yahuwah came again unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus. See, the word of Yahuwah came unto me again. This is another, Ezekiel 31 is actually after this, to be honest with you. So, this is Ezekiel 28. So Christ comes to Ezekiel again, saying, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyre, say unto the prince of Tyrus, thus saith Yahuwah God, because thine heart is lifted up. Who is Ezekiel talking to? The prince or the king of the city of Tyre. And he's saying, say to this Jew, because his heart is lifted up, because he's arrogant, because he's prideful, because his heart is lifted up. And thou hast said, I am God. See that? See that? For many of you people that think that, I've heard a doctor say that he was God in the hospital when my grandfather was dying from bowel cancer. There was an untouchable, but he wasn't like the untouchable. He wasn't the real clear untouchables where you could see the veins through the skin. He was the darker one, and they don't like to be called Jewish. See, I'm going to have to explain that at some other time. But he was a surgeon. And my grandfather was dying from bowel surgery. We should have never had him get that surgery where the bull cut into his bowel and took out a piece of his bowel and all this shit. I should have just told my grandfather, listen, man, we're going to do this natural or you die. Because if anything like that ever occurs with me, I'm a natural it or see you later. I'm not going to let them cut me. I'm trusting in the Most High. And many of you think that's stupid. But I say it's stupid to trust in man. Of course, if your hand fall off, you got to go to the emergency room. Of course. If you get shot, you got to go to the ER. Of course, let's not be stupid. But to just blatantly put your life in their hands like that, no. I'm not going to do that. Okay? But let's keep reading. So Christ is telling you right here, the bull said, because your heart is lifted up, and Christ says, and thou hast said, I am God. So the bull said he was God. He's telling you right here. That's what Christ said. And then he says, I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas. Yet thou art a man and not God. So Christ says, listen, tell him he is a man. He is a man and not God. Though thou set thine heart as the heart of God. See, this is what the Antichrist is going to do. The Antichrist wants us to worship him. It tells you that in the scroll of Revelations. So who do you think is dealing with the Antichrist? The Antichrist is literally going to be the devil in the flesh. He's going to be a different animal from these guys. These guys here were just dealing with the devil. They weren't the devil in the flesh. The Antichrist is going to be an incarnate of the old serpent, literally. But all of these other princes, that's because this is the end right here. The time that we're going into is the last idol, the last king, everything. Christ is setting up Christ's world order is going to come and break the new world order by the feet and is going to rise up for 1,000 years. And that sounds stupid to a lot of people. That's stupid. Let me repeat that. That sounds stupid to a lot of people. That's stupid because you can't see past this world, especially for those of you that got blue kudos of gold. Y'all definitely can't see nothing. Y'all about as blind as a bat in daytime because y'all love this world and y'all don't even want what the kingdom has to offer. We don't need y'all. You are the Negroes that are going to be left because y'all want to stay down here. And when the Antichrist offers you all that chip, y'all going to take it because y'all don't want to be broke. Some of you are more afraid of being broke than you are afraid of Christ. That's sad. That's sad. If you are more afraid of being broke than you are afraid of Christ, you got it coming. You got it coming because you don't understand nothing. You don't understand anything. Right? It says here, he says, then Christ is going to mock him. Christ is going to mock him. He says, behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee. Listen what it says here. It says, with thy wisdom and with thine understanding, thou hast gotten these riches and hast gotten gold and silver into thy treasures. Christ is mocking this king of Tyre. He says, can't nobody tell you nothing. He says, behold, you're wiser than Daniel. He's mocking him. This is a proverb. He's mocking. This king is not wiser than Daniel. Do y'all know how intelligent Daniel was? Daniel was a very intelligent seer. Okay? Daniel brought down a lot of false things and stood in the face of adversity the whole time that he was in captivity. Daniel was in captivity, and he had the favor of Nebuchadnezzar and had favor of those other princes in the provinces of Babylon because of his wisdom. Daniel was wise. So Christ is mocking the prince of terror. He's saying, oh yeah, you wiser than Daniel. Just like a lot of you internet gurus and a lot of you celebrities. Oh yeah. Y'all wiser than Daniel. Just like a lot of y'all advice givers on the internet. Oh, you wiser than Daniel. A lot of women on the internet that try to give advice and think that they can tell men what to do. Y'all wiser than Daniel. Hang on, be tight, be patient. Y'all wiser than Daniel. Keep it up, right? He said, there's no secret that they can hide from thee, Christ said. He says, with thy wisdom and with thy understanding, thou hast gotten these riches. So you got these riches all by yourself, right? Let me get something real quick. Christ saying, oh, you got these wisdom, you got these riches all by yourself, right? Prince of Terror, you know everything, right? Let's go to Job 12:23. Let's go to Job 12:23. Let's see how much y'all know. Job 12:23. Listen, this is Job, chapter 12:23. He increaseth the nations and destroyeth them. He enlargeth the nations and straighteneth them again. He taketh away the heart and the chief of the people of the earth, and causeth them to wander in the wilderness, where there is no way. It is Christ that raises nations, and it is Christ that brings nations down. Don't you understand that? Right? But you can't tell the boy nothing though, right? So Christ is mocking him. Christ is saying, listen, you got all this gold and all this riches by yourself because you are so smart. He says, therefore, thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, because thou hast set thine heart as the heart of God. See, many of you out there, even to this day, many of my own people, you have set your heart as the heart of God. Many of you, especially on the internet, you do not retain God in your knowledge. You will die the death. You understand what I'm saying? Y'all got something coming because you're arrogant. You're arrogant. Now, listen. Verse 7, he says, behold, therefore I will bring strangers upon thee. So he's telling the prince of terror, I'm going to bring strangers, foreigners, heathens, other nations. Just like he did with Pharaoh, he's going to bring, he didn't bring down every king this way. He brought down different kings in different ways. But this king of Tyre, he's going to bring down, just like he brought down Pharaoh. Listen to what Christ says. Behold, I will bring strangers upon thee, foreigners upon thee, another nation upon you, the terrible of the nations, terrible of the nations. And they shall draw their swords against the beauty of thy wisdom, and they shall defile thy brightness. Damn. Christ said, since you're lifted up in your heart, you're so prideful, I'm going to bring real gangsters your way. You understand that? Real gangsters. And guess what? They're going to defile your beauty. They're going to tear down your city. You understand that? You don't believe that, Prince of Tyre? You don't believe that 200, 300 million, billion-dollar niggas in the entertainment industry? You don't believe that? Prideful Instagram gurus? You don't believe these things? You don't believe these things? Huh? Y'all think it's all a game, right? None of you all believe these things? He say, they're going to defile your brightness. He says, they shall bring thee down to the pit. There goes that same language again that was used in Isaiah chapter 24. Isaiah chapter 14 and Ezekiel 31. They're going to murder you. They're going to bring you down to the pit, and thou shalt die the depths of them. Damn. Christ, this is Christ talking. Christ is a nice guy, right? And Christ says, tell him that he's going to die the death that are slain in the midst of the seas. He says, wilt thou yet say before him that slayeth thee, I am God? Oh, shit. Man, y'all don't know how thorough Christ is, man. Christ is saying, listen, I'm gonna tell some goons to come and knock down your city walls. Are you going to tell them that you are God? Are you going to stand with guns, with knives at your throat, and you're going to say, I'm God, when these cats got the swords at your throat and your army defeated and your walls fallen and your wives defiled and your money looted? Are you going to tell them that you're God then? Are you going to still say that you're God? Are you going to still act pompous and lofty and arrogant and all of these things? Are you going to do it when you're going to have that same energy when you get brought low? Are you still going to have that same energy? Huh? Are you still going to have that same energy then? Then he's going to say, thou shalt die the deaths of the uncircumcised by the hands of the strangers, by the hands of foreigners. For I have spoken, Christ said. And y'all think it's not going to happen? Christ also said that you Negroes who are unbelievers will die the death here in the land of Babylon that you love so much. You don't believe that, do you? You don't believe Christ's words? You disrespect prophecy? You think prophecy won't happen? Huh? Keep it up. Keep your non-belief. He says, moreover, the word, what did he say? By the hands of strangers. He said, for I have spoken it, saith Yahuwah Elohim. He says, moreover, the word came unto me saying, now, here's where it takes a twist. And this is why the young boy, if y'all want to know why the young boy was confused, it's not, I don't come on here with fake messages, okay? I don't conjure up fake DMs, okay? I'm about to show y'all why the young boy is confused. Now, I gave two previous examples, but I want to show you why his head was messed up and why he didn't understand it. A lot of people didn't understand Ezekiel 31, and a lot of people had trouble with Isaiah chapter 14. They said in one case, you got people thinking Ezekiel 31 was talking about Adam. Everybody thinks Isaiah chapter 14 is talking about the devil. Not directly. It's talking about a man that dealt with the devil. Now, let's go. Now, let me show you why young boy was confused. Let's start off at verse 12. This is Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 12. And listen to what it says. He says, Son of man, take up a lamentation upon the king of Tyrus, and say unto him, Thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, thou sealest up the sum, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. He says, thou hast been in the garden of Eden of God. Thou hast been in the garden of Eden of God. Thou hast been in the garden of Eden of God. Thou hast been in the garden of Eden of God. Thou hast been in the garden of Eden of God. But wait a minute. Right up here in verse 12, let me start at verse 11 again, because I think y'all missed it. So we know that he was just talking about the prince of Tyre, right? A man, right? Verse 11, Christ is now going to start the metaphor. He's now going to start the riddle. He's now going to begin a proverb. And he says, moreover, the word of Yahuwah came unto me saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation upon the king of Tyre. So he's still talking about the king of Tyre. And saying to him, thus saith Yahuwah, thou sealest up the sum, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Verse 13, talking about the king of Tyre. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. But we know the king of Tyre was not in Eden, in the garden of God. So here's the metaphor. Here's the trick. He says, thou hast been in the garden of Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. The worksman of thy tabrets, of thy pipes was prepared in thee. So the pipes were prepared in thee. So Satan had pipes in his body. So he was the singer, the musician of heaven. He says, in the day that thou was created, thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. But now, he's talking about the king of Tyre, but I want you to understand the twist. He's talking about Satan too, but I want you to listen. He says, thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. He says, thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou was created till iniquity was found in thee. By the multitude of thy merchandise, by the multitude, still talking about the king of Tyre. He's still talking about Satan / king of Tyre / Satan. He says, by the multitude of your merchandise. Satan don't physically got merchandise. Satan don't need to sell merchandise. It says here, by the multitude of thy merchandise, they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom. By reason of thy brightness, I will cast thee to the ground. Don't that sound like the other scriptures that I was reading? Christ says, I'm going to cast thee to the ground. How can he cast Satan to the ground? Satan, he's not going to literally cast the devil to the ground. Well, actually, he will. He will. But that's why in the verse in Revelations, it says that he's going to toss Satan down to the ground and his angels with him. So Satan is actually in the future, he's going to actually get tossed, because right now he's the principality of the air. But just as he was evicted from the holy mountain, Satan will also be evicted from all the heavens and is going to literally be trapped down here among us. But that's for another message. But it's telling you, listen, Okay, I think y'all get this. I think y'all get the picture. I'm getting sleepy. The point is this: he's going back and forth like this. King of Tyre, Satan. King of Tyre, Satan. King of Tyre, Satan. He's talking about the king of Tyre, but the king of Tyre is in operation with Satan. How did the king of Tyre get to be the king of Tyre? How did he get all his riches and his gold and all of these things? And you are not a king that is following the commandments of God, because all of these kings went against the commandments of God. Nebuchadnezzar, Sargon, the king of Tyre, all of them, with the exception of David and with the exception of Cyrus. And Cyrus was a foreigner, but Cyrus' heart was righteous. Cyrus, this is how you can tell a thorough king, a king that's righteous, when he allows the Israelites to worship their God in their temple. That's a different story. That's on a different level. But the reason why these metaphors are like this is because just like Satan took Christ up to the mountain and showed him the whole world, and he said, all of this is yours if you will bow to me. All of these kings that I'm reading to you about bowed to Satan. They were approached by Satan, just like Christ was. And they were given offers that they couldn't refuse. And they bowed to the devil, and the devil gave them power. And this is why they had to fall. And because anybody that's willing to work with the devil is a prideful, arrogant mother effer. That goes for anybody. If you're willing to work hand in hand with the devil, you ain't shit. And you're going to fall. You will fall. You understand what I'm saying? Many of you working with the devil, and you don't even know you're working with the devil. All you got to do one day, many of you all, is watch yourself talk in the light of the commandments and see if the nature in which you are performing in front of the camera, see if it's a nature of humility, and see if it goes along with the commandments of God. And if it doesn't, then you know that you are in a very prideful state and death is coming your way. Death. That's what the Bible says, because pride comes before the fall. You understand that? All of these kings are in positions, were put in positions by the devil, and they all fell. And nothing's going to change. This type of attitude, this type of arrogancy, it will always be subject to the devil. And it will always come to a fall. It will always come to a halt. Always. What goes up must come down. This is the law of the universe. Shalom.